Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Global Nomads Podcast. Today we have Louis Bontorin, co-owner of Calgary Italian Bakery, chair of the Baker Association of Canada, board member of the Alberta Food Processing Association. So Louis wears a lot of hats, but the main thing is that he also has an immigration story, and that's what we're here for today. So welcome, Louis. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here, and thank you for being open to having this conversation. And let's start with your family immigrating to Canada.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Absolutely. So my dad came to Canada in 1954. So when he came, it was one of those situations where you actually went where they told you to go. So he arrived in Halifax and was told to come to Calgary. And that's where he landed, and that's where he had to start to make his living. So he came from Italy. He was the oldest of 10 children.
10 children?
Yes.
Wow.
So he has 4 brothers and 5 sisters.
Did the rest of the family come as well?
No, he's the only person that came to Canada.
Oh, wow.
He did have a brother, and a sister came to Canada in the 80s for about 3 or 4 years, but he was the only one that came to Canada and stayed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then my mom has an immigration story as well. She was the 10th of 11 children.
Wow.
And her parents came from Ireland. So they came at the turn of the century. And she was born in Canada. Some of her siblings were born in England. Some were born in Ireland. And then her and 2 older sisters and 1 younger brother were born here in Calgary.
Oh, wow. That's
so a diverse sort of story there where you blend Irish and Italian, so you can imagine the fiery temper that is potential.
I can imagine that. I can imagine that.
Yeah.
But it's a nice combination, right? So they came here, they met each other, met in Calgary.
That's a great story, actually. My dad came to Calgary. His first job was actually in the Kananaskis area. Mm-hmm. So he was in the upper and lower lakes, the interlake area, and he cut down trees. And he did that for a whole summer, and he said it was one of the best jobs he ever had. He got paid $2 a day and all he could eat. So wow. He said it was fantastic. Then that fall, when it started to freeze up, he had to come back to Calgary and start finding work here. He actually billeted. So my mom actually ran a boarding house with her mom, and my dad was a billet there. And actually, that's how they met.
Oh.
Yeah, so he was a billet at the house. And he had a Christmas party coming up because he used to work for a company called White Rose Petroleum, which is now Shell.
Okay.
And he was going to a Christmas party and he needed a date. So he asked my mom out, and they started dating, and then they were married, I think, about a year later, 1959.
That's a quick kind of went from dating to getting married, and
it was like a less than a year. And my dad laughs because they got married on September 19th, but he says he charged him for the whole month's rent. He used to tease her about that all the time.
And but how then? How did it come about to becoming a baker? So where did that story come from?
So my dad was still working for White Rose, and at the time they had a downsize, like so often happens in the oil patch.
Yep, the boom and the bust.
It was, and there was one of the busts, and he actually got a small severance package. My mom had just received an inheritance because her mother had passed away. Mm-hmm. So they took their money, pooled it together, and started a bakery. So my dad had some experience as a baker. When he was over in Italy, he had an uncle that owned a small bakery. So he wanted to try something where he was his own boss. He didn't like the idea of boom and bust and relying on someone else for a job. So he started in 1962. They had some trials and tribulations. My dad actually in 1967 was suggested by the bank that they should declare bankruptcy because they were so far in debt. Mm-hmm. But being the stubborn Italian, he sort of forged forward. And actually by 1970, he was actually starting to make some money.
So it took him quite a while, 8 years. It took him to start earning money from the bakery.
Well, he started making money okay to begin with, just a little bit. Mm-hmm. But then he sort of got distracted because what he did is there was an opportunity to buy a small grocery store. So he started doing both. And he said that's when he made a very bad misstep. He actually lost a lot of money for a couple of years, and he got to a point where he was in dire straits. And he actually closed the grocery store and went back to the foundation of baking and turned it around. But he had to pay back a fairly big debt over a couple of years.
But baker is like, first of all, bread in a lot of cultures, in my culture included, is cornerstone of the culture.
It's a staple, important. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, We have a saying about breaking bread, and I didn't know about it. That is, the same thing is in English language and different languages.
Yeah, breaking bread means coming together as a family, sharing. Yeah, absolutely. It's a foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, even like partners says, hey, before we go and have go into partnership, let's break bread together.
Absolutely. No, for sure.
So it's a very essential business.
It is, and it's a staple, and I mean it's foundational to just about every nationality or culture. I mean, and that's the wonderful thing about Calgary is you can experience, Italian breads, you can French pastries, you can experience baklava, which is Greek or Lebanese, and you can see pita bread, you can have pita bread, you can have pan de sal, which is Filipino. So there's all these different nationalities that blend here and bring along a lot of their culture, which is fantastic.
Yep. And that's one of the things we were exploring when we moved here as well. One of the things we were exploring is trying to find the bread that makes more sense for us.
Absolutely.
And it was trial and error, and now my wife just bakes her own bread, as I just mentioned earlier to you as well.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
it's part of that. Dear friends, I would like to take a quick pause right now to say thank you to Sergey from New West Video for helping out with all of our visuals today. And if you want to find out more, there's a link below. And I would also like to thank you to Angelica for helping with all the social media marketing. And guess what? There's also a link below to find out more. And also, one favor from you. Please like and subscribe, and share the video with your friends and family. For the immigration story.
Yeah.
So I understand that your dad came here, but tell me a bit about yourself, like growing up in an immigrant family, because you were born here.
Yep.
And growing up as part of the business and now continuing the business itself. So how was it growing up in Canada in an immigrant family, and especially back in those days?
So, it was funny because back in the 50s, there would have been some discrimination against Italians. And when they first arrived and stuff like that, and they were always thought to be associated with the mafia and different things like that. So they sort of had a bad name. Excuse me. So, it was interesting because I was immersed in the Italian sort of culture because that's what my dad sort of believed in. We had pasta at dinner. Even as a young kid, you'd get a little sip of wine, and sharing wine is an important piece as well. It's part of the culture as well, and the pastas and the different things like that. Going to social events, my dad was involved in the Italian Club, which is here in Calgary. He helped with the Italian Church, which is now known as the Spanish Church. But things like that. As a group, the Italians came together. They used to live, a lot of them lived down in Bridgeland and stuff like that. And they had the church down there. They had the club is still down there. So, a lot of the foundational or founding members of those things were like my dad's friends, and he was part of it. And being part of that was exciting because if you're immersed in the culture, you really have a passion for it. Like being Italian, I was proud to be an Italian. What was interesting though is because we lived in the south part of the city, I went to Bishop Grandin, and there wasn't very many Italian families at Bishop Grandin. Most of them were north at St. Francis. So a lot of my friends, would go, "You're Italian, why aren't you going to St. Francis?" And the standing joke was, "You didn't go to St. Francis and you're Italian?" So yeah, it was kind of interesting. But being Italian to me was something to be proud of. It was something that you sort of pounded your chest and say, "Yeah, I'm Italian," and it's come to be really, really sort of unique now because lots of people like going to Italian food, like the Italian restaurants, all that influence. But it's interesting because back in the 60s, when my dad tried to bring out some of the Italian breads, no one was interested. Everyone was interested in white breads and hamburger buns, and it was a rarity that people wanted whole wheat bread. They wanted white bread. So there's been a market shift in that whole area, which is really kind of cool. And I think that has to do with the influence of healthier eating, but also all the different breads that were introduced from different cultures. So with my dad, trying to introduce Italian breads back in the 60s unsuccessfuli. Now Italian breads are in vogue. It's something that people like, people want. They talk about ciabatta. They talk about different things that are pane italiano and so forth. So you see a lot of people looking for that, which is kind of cool. So sometimes you're ahead of your time.
Sometimes you're definitely ahead of your time. A good comparison was like back home, back in Azerbaijan in the early 2000s. People tried opening coffee shops similar to, in Europe or similar to here. But all of those coffee shops failed because we have such a strong tea culture. And people just prefer to go to those tea houses and drinking tea. However, as the economy grew, more expats came to work on larger, mostly oil and gas projects. They wanted coffee. So slowly and slowly, the culture shifted. And now you can see coffee shops back home all over town.
All over, yeah.
So sometimes it's just about timing.
Timing, absolutely. Well, and it's funny, too, because I was just in Italy last summer. So I was in Italy, and I was in Germany this spring. And it's funny, over there, they want to be American. And Americans want to be European. It's funny because, you go there and you see a Five Guys. And you're like, why is there a Five Guys in Germany? Yeah. Why is there a Five Guys on the main street in Paris? Like, really? Like, you guys have great pastry, you have baguettes, you have that, and then you're going to have a Five Guys. And I love Five Guys, don't get me wrong. They make a great burger, but you're like, in Europe, you're wanting to be American, and the Americans are all wanting to be European. So it's interesting how those influences actually sort of work their way into the environment.
It comes, right? Like when the culture is there and you on a daily basis eat some of the, let's say, like Italian food.
Yep.
So sometimes you want to take a break and try something different, maybe something quicker, maybe something not as healthy. And same here is like when you're here exposed to a lot of, let's say, ribs, right?
Yeah.
Or burgers. You're like, I don't want burgers anymore. I want something new.
That's so true. It's so true. I mean, and Five Guys makes a great burger, so I can see why they've sort of made a mark in Europe. But it's just funny how, you don't realize what you have. You always look at the other side of the fence and go, well, geez, I wish I had that. I mean, that's so exciting. And you don't realize how lucky you are with what you have. Like, I mean, Alberta is famous for beef. And we have great beef here, and we don't even understand that, right? Yeah. And then people come from all over the world and they hear about Alberta beef. And, you're sitting here enjoying Alberta beef without realizing how fortunate you are.
100%. Like one of the things we as a family were afraid of was food when we were moving, and just to make sure that like each country, they have their own traditions, but also the meat and some of the other things, they might taste different. Yeah. But we're so fortunate we chose Calgary. And the food and the beef, as you mentioned, is amazing here. It's
oh yeah, we're a little bit spoiled.
yeah, definitely.
And we're spoiled with the wheat as well. The quality of wheat that we have in Canada is amazing. It's interesting to see because we have high protein, we have good wheat, and it makes very good bread. Yep. And I mean, we don't make. Some people would say our bread isn't as good as it is in Europe, but I mean, at the same time, it is very, very good. It's high quality, and we have lots of great bakers here that do fantastic jobs.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. We are fortunate to be here.
I believe so too.
But let's talk about culture a little bit more. In terms of the Italian culture, how does that culture, and not just Italian, also because being half Irish as well, how do those cultures influence the way you run the business today?
My dad had a big hand in that from the fact that he, taught us lots of valuable lessons, that lessons like a handshake was your word. I mean, my dad was a firm believer that if you gave your word, that's your honor. So there's been times where Dave and I have made promises to customers, and if it means us losing money, we made a promise we're going to deliver. And my dad also believed that you would under-promise, over-deliver. He also believed that, your word was your honor. He believed that the only place that success came before work was in the dictionary. So there's little things like sort of adages that he used to always use. So he was a man of honor. He was a man that believed that, you over deliver. You made sure that you took care of your customers. If they were a customer, you take care of them. And, just the way he sort of looked at his business, he looked at it as it was the fourth child. So my family is my mom, my dad, I'm the eldest, then my brother Dave, and then a younger sister, Teresina. And we always used to joke, there was 4 children and the bakery was the 4th child and it got the most attention. So yeah, he nurtured it. And then I think he didn't differentiate himself from the bakery. So his name was Luigi Bontorin, Calgary Italian Bakery. It was all one word. It was like he was synonymous to the company, and he was the face of the company. And, because he preached that so long, Dave and I so sort of fallen into the same thing. We believe we're the bakery and the bakery's us, and we treat it as our baby. And you nurture it, and you do whatever you can to make sure it's successful.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you've seen how your parents have treated it, you definitely will want to treat it the same way.
Absolutely.
But let's go quickly to like you said, that the word is your honor is one of the adages that your father used to say.
Absolutely.
In today's world, when things are shifting a little bit more fast-paced, people don't rely on your word anymore as much. They're more like what's in the contract and all those kind of stuff. How do you see that mindset? Like, is it still the same mindset, or has it shifted a little bit?
Obviously you have to be protective, so you have to understand the contracts. But still, Dave and I operate on that simple principle that if we've told you we're going to do something, we're going to do it. We're going to deliver on that. If we told you we're going to make sure the delivery is there at 6 a.m., whatever it takes is going to be there at 6 a.m. If our customer wants a certain product and wants us to develop a certain product, we're gonna do whatever we can to develop that product. And we remain faithful to those principles because you want to develop that trust with your customer. If you lose that trust, you've basically lost your company, because that's what brings them back. Yep. That trust, the fact that they can rely on you, that they know if you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. We've all had experiences where someone's told you they're going to do something and they don't do it, and then you're very disappointed, and you probably won't likely recommend that company or use them again, right? I mean, we're a company that relies on repeat business. We're not selling cars, we're selling bread. People buy bread once, twice, 3 times a week. They buy a car once every 10 years, every 5 years. So we rely on repeat business. So we have to make sure that our promise is our word, and we deliver, and we develop that trust between us and our customer, and make sure they feel comfortable with us.
Yeah, and I guess you also have to make sure that it's all on time, because if you delivered 1 day late, you already lost 1 day of the useful lifetime of the bread.
You're always judged on your last delivery. And it's just like when you go to a restaurant, you're judged on your last meal. And chefs have the same type of situation that we have. I mean, when you go to a restaurant and you've gone there 50 times over the last 10 years and the meals have been fantastic, you remember your last meal. And if it wasn't good, all of a sudden you forget all those 49 before. It's interesting, because that's the food industry, right? Yeah. We're judged on our last delivery or contact.
Interesting. That's a very neat way to put it, being judged in the last contact. So make sure that all your last contacts are always good.
They have to be. And if you do something wrong, and we all make mistakes, but it's how you deal with that mistake as well. You can sort of slough it off, or you can actually get to the root cause and make sure it's solved and make sure the customer's happy with the resolution. Yep. We also pride ourselves on that, because if we do something wrong, we'll fix it. If the quality isn't right, we fix it. Those are all things that my dad taught us. We're responsible. It's our word. We have to deliver on that, and we have to deliver on the quality of our products, the freshness of our products, the delivery frequency and timing. Those are all important factors to a customer. And like I said, it's your last contact that you're judged on. You can do it right 100 times, but if you do it wrong the last time, that's what you're going to be judged on.
But then let me bring it to a different question. If you are judged by 100 times and you're always judged on the last contact, how do you start? So, for example, if someone is here watching us and they want to get into the industry, maybe they want to get a Cops franchise, or maybe they want to get into something else, but still, being judged is still going to be first. But if the person who is going to be their new buyer doesn't know them, this is their first contact, what suggestion would you have for them?
So when you're trying to break into the market, some of the things that are really important is making sure that you try to differentiate yourself. I mean, what's your differentiating factor? Is it quality? Is it price? What are you trying to do, right? So I always say, if you're going to live by the sword, you die by the sword. So if you're going to do it purely on price, not a good place to be, because there's always going to be someone cheaper. If you're going to work on quality and service, those are what we try to differentiate on. We try to differentiate on the fact that we're going to give you great quality and great service. Our price isn't going to be the cheapest in the market, but you can rely on the other things. Yeah. So when you're trying to break into the market, it's important to actually decide on what your differentiating factor is. Is it going to be you're going to make a unique product that differentiates you from the rest of the market? Because everyone makes a white bread. Yeah. So that's not a good place. That's a commodity. And we often talked about the fact that, that we do dabble in the commodities, because white bread, brown bread, hamburger buns, hot dog buns are all commodities. You can go walk into any store and they'll be on sale. Just about every time you walk into a store, you'll see white bread or hamburger buns or hot dog buns, but you don't see some of the fancier products maybe on sale. Yeah. So if you're going to differentiate yourself, pick a market that you want to work in. If you want to work in commodities, not a great place, because there's always players that are going to be cheaper, and that's a hard one to be in. So making a unique product, identifying a market that you want to get into. Is there a segment? For example, recently there's been a lot of immigrants that have come in from Ukraine and different things. So would you do a great job if you gave them a taste of home? that could give you a good, starting point. If you know that there's a shift towards how they want products to be presented at restaurants. If they've gone away from just a plain hamburger bun, which, you've seen now, where you've seen brioche, you've seen potato buns, you've seen pretzel buns, you've seen lots of different factors where they look at different things. They're looking for influences. And if I look for influences, often what I'll do is I like to see what's happening in Europe, because what we see happen in Europe sort of comes across Europe over to usually the West Coast or East Coast, and then sort of comes into the prairies. So something I might see in Italy, you might see 6 months or 8 months or a year later here in Calgary. So if you see something unique over there, you might go, oh, this is something that's sort of coming. You look for some trends, you look for some different things that might make it unique.
Interesting, especially for someone who is just arrived to Canada. Potentially they already know some of those trends that are happening in their local market that they could utilize.
Absolutely.
Nice. Well, that's a good point. So it's a good place to start, just understand what's different. It may take some time to actually understand what the landscape is like.
Yeah.
But as long as you know how to start understanding it, you can easily find the gap and then start penetrating the market slowly.
Absolutely. If you see a gap in the market, that's the best place to try to penetrate. Yeah. Price, like I said, prices win by the sword, die by the sword. That's not a good place to be.
But let's talk about food processing. So food processing in general is becoming a bigger thing, especially here in Alberta.
Yes.
But what type of trends do you see in that space right now? What are the most popular things that are being processed these days?
It's interesting because at the food awards, that we saw some interesting things there at the food awards. They were doing pre-mixed drinks. We saw some really unique desserts. We saw, some different spices, sauces, and that type of stuff. So there's lots of startups, and it was interesting because during COVID, I've met a lot of people over the last few years during COVID. They found something that they were tinkering with during COVID, and all of a sudden they've made it into a small business. Met somebody that was doing sauces, so barbecue sauces, and they started just tinkering in their basement. Now they're actually got a small business going where they sell barbecue sauces and different things, hot sauces. Seen some stuff in that area. I've seen some stuff in one of the ladies that won an award was they were doing a lot of Ukrainian food where they were doing pierogies and kubasa and all that. And they did a fantastic job because they were doing pre-made dinners, and they were also making, catering and stuff like that. So they saw some uniqueness there. I really think it has to do with, identifying some of the stuff that is new. Like if there's a new immigration wave, like some of those things are very, very important to actually tap into. But the food processing industry is always vibrant. Alberta is, a great place for it. It's one of those things where, even baking, some of the things that you see as far as some of the pastries, and, you've got people that in Calgary decided donuts, and you're seeing a $4 donut. No one would ever thought of seeing a $4 donut a few years ago, but they've made a go of it. Krispy Kreme's making a comeback here in Calgary again. They've launched another location. That's huge down the States. You see lots of different things happening. And I think the fact is that Calgary has a very, very unique palate. There's a lot of people here that really pride themselves on being forward thinkers. We have some of the best restaurants in Alberta, in Calgary, and we have some of the best restaurants in Canada. There's a number of them here in town that, rank in the top 10 every year. And it's amazing to see that we have that type of talent. Sade and Nate produce a lot of great chefs every year. They produce a lot of great bakers every year. So you've got a lot of talent coming out of some of those vocational schools. And it's not unique to Calgary or Edmonton. There's vocational schools in BC, Vancouver, the island, down in Toronto and that whole area. So, we continue to produce a lot of talent. And the neat thing about it is it's the youth that comes up, and they come up with some great ideas, and they combine different things. You see restaurants that pop up that use, the synergy of two different elements, like Japanese, Italian cuisine. And you're like, I'd never combine those two, but wow, interesting things.
Some things should not be combined, like at Stampede time. I've seen hot dogs with Skittles. Maybe that is a bit extreme.
But that's the wow factor or the shock factor. Yeah. Right? Like the Stampede does some interesting things. Scorpion pizza. It's the shock factor. I think in some cases, yes. Deep fried Skittles. Like okay.
Yep. It's
yes. Yeah. I would agree with you. Those are the things that you wouldn't want to combine, and who would want them on a regular basis?
Yeah, but maybe they can get off it because it's Stampede time, and people actually appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And You did mention that Alberta is a good place to start a company here, especially in the food processing space. What mechanisms, not mechanisms, maybe mechanisms is not the right word, but what tools do you think are available in Alberta for people to be able to start business here in the food processing space?
Well, they have a really wonderful food center up north, close to Edmonton, that it sort of works as sort of a hub where you can actually go in and actually experiment. They have rental areas and space for kitchens and so forth. That's all run through the Alberta government. So, things like that, which really entice small business people. Like, for example, you might have somebody that's been doing some stuff in their own kitchen, but they want to ramp it up to a little bit further. So the Leduc Food Center would be a great place to sort of go to the next level and work through it.
In the Leduc Center, you can go and rent some space and kind of...
and they've got equipment. They do all that stuff. They help with nutritionals. They help with a lot of that stuff. They'd help with labeling. A lot of that helps the person go from sort of this entry level to the next level and potentially move on from there. There's a lot of support. I mean, if you went to the Alberta Food Processors Association, one of the things we pride ourselves on is that we help sort of connect people. Like if you're trying to figure out how to do nutritional, we have people that you can connect to if you want to do some food safety training, if you want to do different things to get it so you're elevating what you need to talk to some of the big businesses. I mean, last year at our event for our dinner, we had a speaker from Costco talking to you about what Costco expects from their suppliers. This year there was someone from Sobeys. I mean, those are great things, having those opportunities, because you get to learn. And I mean, you don't want to learn the hard way. And my dad probably learned a lot of those lessons the hard way, because back in the 60s and early 70s, none of that was available. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have the ability to look things up. So
no ChatGPT.
When someone said you need a UPC on your product code, on your product, my dad was like, what's a UPC, a universal product code? But I mean, someone may not know what that means. You need to have a nutritional on the back of your packaging. We're now going through an iteration of labeling. So front of packaging labeling, like what's the requirements there? Those are all things that, the Food Processing Association can help with. Baking Association of Canada can also help with those things. So we have a lot of resources. And I mean, it's nice to see that there are government resources supported by the government that are there to help the young entrepreneurs sort of get to the next level. Because if you're trying to research all that stuff yourself, you're going to go crazy and pull your hair out. Had a conversation this morning. We were talking about temporary foreign workers and LMIA. So that whole process, I mean, there are, consultants out there that can help you, but there's lots of resources with some of these organizations that would actually give you the foundation to start moving forward in some of those areas. Those are great places to start. And I'd recommend that to anyone that's trying to start a new business. Reach out. There's people that can answer those questions. Guess what? We've gone through it ourselves before. And with the Alberta Food Processors Association, there's lots of valuable information there.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's a plug for Alberta Food Processors Association.
Yeah, nice little advertisement for them.
Yeah.
But I have been last year at the Leduc Center, so I did appreciate seeing it and what can be done. And just from people going to, I'll go and make some jam in my basement, to going and actually doing it and selling it to Sobeys and whatnot. Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But a different question. Because you are a business owner, and I was thinking about, in the bakery space, there's alternatives. You can start a bakery, or maybe you can go into a franchise, and not just in the bakery space. In general, a franchise is always a good option, potential. So what would you say would be the advantages of considering going solo and going through a franchise?
So I have not a lot of experience with franchises, but I do know some people that have bought franchises in the past. And the support you get from a franchise is that, they've already got the foundation. They've got a lot of the standard operating procedures in place. They've got recipes and formulas and food costs and all those things that make it very simple for you to actually start forward. The upfront cost sometimes is a deterrent. When you hear, for example, a Boston Pizza franchise might be $1 million. Like when you hear some of those numbers, you start going, wow. But they will often tell you start to make money almost instantaneously because it's a recognized brand. When you're driving down Main Street of most towns now, people have often said when they're traveling, they go, you see the same thing. You don't know whether you're driving down Main Street, Calgary or Saskatoon. You see the same types of things. Boston Pizza. You see different things that are as you're driving along. Five Guys. You might see a McDonald's, a Burger King. Familiarity is always something that's really good for people when they're looking for things. Because if you're traveling through a town and you're unfamiliar with it, are you going to stop at Joe's Pizza or are you going to stop at Papa John's Pizza? You recognize the name, you're probably going to go there, or Boston Pizza. Like, you're going to stop with familiarity. That's one of the benefits of franchise. The other thing is the support that you get from a franchise. I mean, the marketing that comes along with it, the support as far as, having all the things already designed, food costs, and et cetera. Solo, I think one of the things about going solo is that you have the opportunity to create what you want. You're not sort of put into a square sort of box, and this is all you're supposed to do.
So if you want to experiment, you can experiment.
Absolutely. If at some of the franchises, they'll tell you exactly what your menu is. You can't have anything outside this. This is what you're selling, these 18 items, nothing else, nothing more. You can't have anything else. The uniqueness that you have when you have your own is that you can do whatever you want. You can adjust to trends. You can do all those types of things. So that's kind of the uniqueness. Some of the challenges is being recognized. So how do you draw the people in the first time? And, like I said, bakery is repeat business. It's just like, if you're selling pastry and a coffee, how do you make it that they come into your coffee shop rather than Tim Hortons across the street or a Starbucks?
Yeah.
Like, what makes you the destination? Why do I come there? So, you want to have something unique, and then you want to make sure you wow them. You wow them with whatever you're doing, that you're doing a great job. Service has to be, paramount, and your quality has to be paramount, so that you want a return customer, because all this type of stuff, food is a return customer. We don't rely on the fact that you eat once every 7 years. We rely on the fact that we have 3 meals a day, and snacks, whatever else that goes along with it. But you want people to come back. So repeat is important. So
that makes a very valid point. I guess it's always a challenge to understand, for a new business owner, the way they want to go. There are definitely some support mechanisms available for franchises as well, but typically there's more governmental support for new business and new processing and
absolutely
new value adds.
As long as you're able to tap into those things. And what happens is the young entrepreneur is so busy trying to run their business, they really don't have time to actually pick up the phone and make some of those connections. So that's a valuable point, to make sure that they actually take the time to actually use the resources available to them, because they don't recognize it. I mean, you're so busy running it day-to-day stuff that you don't have the time to do some of that administration stuff where you reach out and talk to people.
And there are a lot of grants available. I was actually talking to an acquaintance today, and he mentioned that for a large manufacturing plant, they were able to secure a very large sum grant. So there's definitely a lot of that available. But they were hired to actually go on behalf of the company to go and do that application, and took them about a year, but they were able to get it through. So it takes time, dedication. And if you're running your own business, sometimes you need to outsource those.
But that's also a cost, and this is we talked about that this morning. We had an interesting conversation around temporary foreign workers, and using consultants to help you get your LMIA in place, or excuse me, when you have a judgment that doesn't come in your way, how do you get a lawyer involved to try to help out? Those are all costs. If you're a small company and you're like 3 or 4 employees, you don't have a lot of overhead and a lot of margin to actually deal with some of those things. Those are the tough things, right? Like you're immersed in your company. You're wanting to tap in some of those resources, and sometimes you don't have the time. So how do you make the time to do that? Or do you try to outsource it? And when you outsource it, there's a cost to it. So that's the difficult balance.
Just trying to find the right,
Absolutely.
No, that makes sense. But in terms of finding yourself, what made you go into the business in the first place? Because this was your father's child, as you mentioned. And, I see a lot of upcoming generations where, a father has a business, but the kids don't want to go into the business. But what kind of, have you always thought that you're going to go in the business, or have you had thoughts about it? Like, what made the weights tilt in into the form of, I'll go into the business?
It's an interesting question, because when I was in school, I always thought about being a doctor. In fact, when I went to U of C, I started down the path of trying to take classes to become eligible to get into medical school. But there was always that drawback into the business. I worked there part-time while I was going to school. I worked there every summer when I was out of school. I started when I was 12 years old. I worked, just about every Saturday since. My brother's the same. He's 1 year younger, so he started at 11. So we literally grew up in the bakery. I mean, before that, you helped out whenever you could, and when mom and dad were there, you were often playing in the bakery or playing behind the bakery or whatever. So there was always that bit of an expectation. You sort of think you might want to go somewhere else, but you get sort of drawn back in, and it's been a great life. It's provided great for me. My kids have seen the struggles that go along with operating a bakery, especially when you start to get to a certain size. So we're almost 24/7. There's always someone in the building just about all the time. So it's closed for a very short period of time, Saturday night into early Sunday morning, where there's nobody in the building. But you get phone calls at 2 a.m. Something went wrong with production. Last Friday, there was a leak in the roof, and you get a phone call at 10:30 on Friday night, and you're dealing with that. So I think my kids sort of recognize, it's a great livelihood, but there's also you never turn it off. Mm-hmm. And I think the kids nowadays are a little better at doing the work-life balance. A lot of immigrants don't have that work-life balance, or that's not what they think of first. They think of, making what they need to and get that work done. Kids nowadays have a more balanced life. And I mean, the desire to go into the bakery is something that I love. I wouldn't be doing it. I'm at 63 years old. I wouldn't still be doing it. I still love it. It's a passion. When you can see or hear someone's had your bread and enjoyed it, it brings a lot of pride to you. You get a smile on your face when you go into a restaurant that uses your product. You're proud of that. Those are all things that you get excited about when someone says, I had your sunflower flax bread and it's wonderful. And you go, wow, and that's my mom and dad on the label. So those things really, really make you smile and make you feel good about what you do. Because it's not just about a business; it's about you're feeding the community. I mean, one of our goals is to give back to the community. We do donations in the form of things that we support St. Vincent de Paul, which is a lot of the churches here in town. We give to the food bank every year. We try to support the community. We do donations. We have some certain organizations that are near and dear to our heart. The Canadian Cancer Society, we support. My dad had cancer in '89. My sister-in-law, Dave's wife, had breast cancer about 10 years ago. So those are near and dear to our hearts because, the Tom Baker Cancer Clinic here in Calgary is magnificent and added life to both my, two of my family members. So how thankful can you be for that?
Of course, family and health comes first.
Absolutely. Family is most important.
No, but I like that you mentioned that, if this is all part of the family, like the bakery, so you cannot really switch it off. It's the same thing as you mentioned earlier as a kid, right? Like if a kid is crying, it's not like, I'm off dad duties right now,
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with having your own business. But for people who may have a business and they're thinking in terms of involving their kids and having their kids go and taking over, leading the business, what kind of a suggestion would you give them? How should they prep their kids to be more interested in the integrated and continuing the legacy? I know this is something you're thinking about as well, but...
Well, absolutely. My kids, so I have a son and 2 daughters, and all of them have jobs outside the bakery, and they enjoy it, and they love it, and they love their careers. So that's fantastic. They always joke about the fact they were voluntold. They were always voluntold into the bakery. So they were there when they were younger, doing simple jobs like packing buns or cleaning or sweeping and that type of stuff. Later working in the store or production lines and so forth. You have to have a balance. You have to understand how much you can push them and how much you don't push them. It's just like a young kid that's learning to play hockey. If you push them too hard, they get to a point where they don't want to play hockey anymore.
Yeah, they hate it.
Exactly. Or learning to play the piano. If you push them too hard, they hate the piano. Later in life, they might come back to you and say, Dad, why didn't you make me take those lessons? But you laugh about it and you move on. But it is a balance about, and each child's different. You recognize how much you can push them or how little you can push them. Some kids need to be sort of pushed off the couch and say, get out and get moving and stuff. Other ones, you don't need to encourage them. They just do it. So there's a balance there. But if you're trying to get your kids involved in the industry and the business, you want them to see all facets of it because, for example, production is one facet of the bakery. There's the sales that are going along with it. There's the marketing that goes along with it. There's R&D that goes along with it. There's quality assurance that goes along with it. So there's lots of different areas you can get involved in a bakery. As a good example, I mean, restaurants are the same. I mean, you've got someone that's working in a restaurant and they go, well, all you do is you wash dishes. No. There's washing dishes, there's prepping, there's the sanitation part, and the same with bakery.
Supplying.
There's supply chain that you have to deal with. Yep. There's, sourcing. There's also menu preparation. So R&D, same as with a bakery, you got menu preparation in a restaurant. So there's lots of different aspects, and you have to sort of see what your kids are interested in. One of my children is, a registered dietitian. She does nutritional analysis, does that type of meal planning for people and so forth. Perfect situation. She learned some of that at the bakery, and she sort of saw a passion for it, which is kind of unique. Another one is in marketing. So, the marketing of the bakery, she had an opportunity to do some of that. So, you give them the gift, and then you give them a chance to fly. And it's important that sometimes they will come back and want to be in the business. Sometimes they go off and they find something else that they enjoy as well. I've heard lots of stories where people have had their kids go out and do other things and come back. A great example of that is in Winnipeg. There's a gentleman that owns a bakery there, and his son was a lawyer. He went and practiced law for about 15 years, then he came back and ran the bakery. So, there's situations like that happen all the time. You get tired of some of that
corporate stuff,
structure. Yeah. I can think of a couple people that I was on a phone call today that were both in the banking industry and now running bakeries. And they said, did it give them a great knowledge and a great background? Absolutely. They love the passion about the bakery. There's something about food that draws a lot of people.
Well, there's a couple of industries in general that will always be around, like Medicare, pharmaceuticals, and food is definitely on the list.
Absolutely. I think we should be the top of the list.
Yeah, I guess so. But I like that you mentioned R&D.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of people think when they think about R&D, first things that comes to mind is clean tech, or maybe some oil and gas company going in and trying to find new stuff.
Yeah.
Or maybe pharmaceuticals and doing R&D and trying to get new medicine. But talk to me about R&D in the bakery space.
Okay, so R&D in the bakery space, for example, about 6 years ago, we decided we were going to go as clean label as possible. So we started taking out some of the...
And can you explain clean label?
Clean label, yeah. So you try to take out some of the ingredients you can't pronounce, like, calcium propionate. Like, do you need to have that in your breads? Some of the things you take out that would make it so it's a more friendly label. So when you look at the ingredients, you can pronounce the ingredients. They're ingredients that you're happy to put into your body. Yeah. When you pick up a package and you start reading it, and there's 15 chemical names on there, you're not so comfortable about eating that. You might put it back down. So, there's that movement towards clean labels. There's the movement to some simpler ingredients. So, as you do R&D, you're going to try to figure out how do you substitute for calprop, which is a calcium propionate, which would be a preservative, right? So what can you use? You can use making the product so it's got more of acidic, so it actually has its own natural ability to sort of prevent mold and so forth. So the other thing is bread should mold. If you have bread and you have it on your shelf and it's there for 30 days, that's not a good thing. You wonder what's in there to make it so it doesn't mold. But with R&D, it would be like sometimes you'd look at some of the ancient grains and they make a comeback, and you've got someone that's using spelt, or you're using different ingredients and products and introducing different inclusions. Like, cinnamon raisin bread is something that lots of people make, but do you put cranberries into it? Do you put walnuts into it? We don't do nuts because we're a nut-free facility, but there are people that, you can combine different ingredients that you never think of putting into bread. You see potato flour being used because of the mouthfeel. So you've got people that are using potato flour in some of the ingredients they're doing. So, but you have to do some development as far as when you're doing that, does it adjust some of the yeast content? Do you have to adjust the hydration of the product? There's other things that you do that when you're making products that you have to sort of go back and sort of do a little bit of research, and you have to do a little bit of experimentation, because you still want to make sure the product is exactly what you want. We were experimenting with doing some breads with yogurt. So substituting yogurt into the product and stuff, so it had a unique taste. But just things like that. You're trying to come up with something that's a little bit unique, a little bit different. So when you talk about R&D, you're talking about new product development, but you're also talking about how do you simplify ingredients? How do you substitute ingredients in some cases that would make it so it is a cleaner label? Mm-hmm. You might look at how do you change some ingredients so that you reach a certain nutritional factor, because how do you get extra fiber or protein? Because protein breads are a hit right now. How do you extra fiber into a product so you can actually get people that can get a fiber claim so you can actually make it sort of healthier products? Those are all things that you sort of
gluten-free is also one of the
gluten-free is one thing that we don't touch on, because if you truly want to do gluten-free, you have to have a completely separate facility, because you don't want to have a trace of it. And I have a daughter who's celiac, so I completely understand that, and I've seen the reaction to someone that's and she calls it being glutened. So, it's one of those things, but you have to be respectful of those things and understand those things. As a food manufacturer, you have a responsibility to take care in all those areas, that you're delivering what you say you're going to deliver. Because if you're gluten-free, be gluten-free. If you're going to make sure that there's no nuts in your facility, you're nut-free. Those are all important factors, and there's also important things that when you're doing those things, you're promising the community that you're doing those things right.
And it's nice because you take the responsibility for that, you understand that.
You have to.
Yeah. But speaking of mold, I do have a quick story. Back at my university times, there was a bread that I used to like to buy. It was an American bread. It was sliced. It was easy, especially, in university, you don't want to spend too much time. So
Absolutely.
it was easy to go and eat it. But one time I forgot to put it away, and I went back home for 2 months. And it was summertime, and it was on a shelf, not in the fridge or anything. And I come back, I'm like, oh, I forgot the bread. It's going to be very moldy. And I look inside, nothing. It's completely fresh. It smelled the same. I tasted it, same taste. I never bought the same bread ever again.
There you go. Bread should mold.
Yeah.
There should be a shelf life.
And not just bread, any kind of product.
Well, every product should be. I totally agree with you. There should be an expiry. If you've got bread and it's like you said, 2 months old, and there's not a speck of mold on it, you wonder what's in it.
Yes.
And then you want to eat it.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you want to eat that kind of? Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that makes sense.
So true.
I have a question about decisions. Like, as a business owner,
Yeah.
you probably have had instances where you had to make difficult decisions. What was your most difficult or memorable decision that you ever had to make?
Difficult or memorable? One of the most difficult things you always do is when you have to terminate someone. That's always a difficult one to do. One of the most memorable decisions, I think one of the most memorable decisions was probably in the last 5 or 6 years when we decided to launch our line of familiar products, which was a sort of an honoring of our parents, simpler ingredients, and we put them on the front of the bag, and it's their picture from the 25th wedding anniversary, and it was kind of to honor them because they both have passed, and it was sort of talking about how we want to stay true to our roots and true to our traditions and stuff like that. So that was one of the most memorable. It was also one of the most exhilarating and probably the most dear to my heart because it was kind of cool. Yeah. And my brother and I decided to launch that, and it was actually pretty amazing.
And it looks good as well and tastes because I did try it. So it looks and tastes good.
Well, thank you. No, that's what you love to hear. That you love to hear that someone tried your product and enjoyed it. So yeah, thank you.
Well, it's hard not to enjoy bread at the same time. It's like we started the conversation with bread being the cornerstone of cultures.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of cultures eat bread even with things like I know people back home that eat bread with spaghetti.
I do.
So it's still part of a lot of culture. Like, bread is so important. And finding bread, making bread out of anything. I remember some of the stories that were told during the Second World War and how people are trying to make bread out of whatever they can scramble.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting area where you're in.
Well, it's at every meal. It's at breakfast. Yep. People have toast. At lunch, sandwiches. Dinner, you have rolls or garlic toast or different things. It does. It's an accompaniment to just about everything you have. Yeah.
And maybe just to wrap this conversation up, what kind of suggestion or maybe motivation you could give to new immigrants who are immigrating here, trying to find themselves in Canada, and not just in Canada, because this podcast, maybe we're starting here having conversation about migrating to Canada, to Calgary, but there could be people listening that are thinking about, I'm moving to Australia, I'm moving to the US or something. Like, what kind of advice would you give them, especially from a perspective of starting their business?
based on what my experience has been and what my dad's and family's experience has been, is that it is going to be hard work. It's making sure that you have that dedication to push it forward, and knowing that there's going to be some days that aren't going to be that easy. Knowing that it's getting up every morning. And my dad always used to say, the sun will rise tomorrow when you go to bed. It's knowing that there is a future and pushing forward. Canada still is one of the greatest countries in the world, and we have lots of opportunity here. The fact that we are a melding pot of lots of different cultures and stuff like that makes it so there's opportunities in so many different niches and different marketplaces that you just have to identify it and go for it. I mean, it's one of those things where there's nothing more exciting than to know that someone's using your product, whether it's a bread or whether it's a gadget you've designed or any of those types of things. It's so rewarding that it brings a smile to your face and it makes you just go on. It's that appreciation. Some of the nuggets that my dad would say is, if you're not early, you're late. He always believed in making sure that you're there for an appointment on time, because that also builds the trust and builds the confidence with your customers and stuff like that. There's lots of opportunity in Canada, and I think we're still at that sort of edge of explosion as far as the food industry is going. Like, there's so many different tastes out there, and as we have more and more cultures come into the country, those opportunities just get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, because they bring their own culture, but then new blends come as well.
Absolutely.
There's so much
new tastes, new foods, new combinations that you never considered before.
Yeah.
I remember my first time trying pita bread, and I'd never had it before, and I was like, wow. Yeah.
Or that day I saw a chain offering taco sushis.
Absolutely.
So so there's a lot of things that you can blend and make it look good.
Absolutely. There's lots of opportunity.
Well, Louis, thank you so much for taking the time and having this very interesting conversation and helping us build some motivation to people that are immigrating and coming here. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.